Welcome back, guys, to Fear Begins. In today's episode, I am sharing 4 terrifying Appalachia home alone horror stories. By the end, you might think twice before spending another night alone in a quiet Appalachian cabin. Before we begin, please consider, and don't forget to like the video and share it with your close friends and family. I would also love to hear where you are listening from. Thank you all for the support. It means a lot to me. Now let's start. I was 19, and that fall I had just taken a break from college due to some mental health issues that had been piling up for months. My aunt, who owned a secluded cabin deep in the heart of West Virginia's Appalachian forest, offered to let me stay there for a few weeks to reset. She said the quiet would help clear my head. It sounded like the perfect getaway. It really did. Until the third night, when everything started to go horribly wrong. The cabin sat a good 10 miles from the nearest town. It was a rustic place with no Wi-Fi, no cell signal, and barely any power. Just a wood-burning stove, a few dusty furniture pieces, and the kind of silence that pressed in on your ears. At first, it was peaceful. I would sit on the porch during the day and watch deer pass through the trees. At night, I'd curl up with a book and fall asleep to the sounds of crickets and owls. But then, the third night came. I had just turned off the oil lamp and laid down in bed. The air had a chill to it. I pulled the blanket tighter and closed my eyes. That's when I heard it, a slow, dragging sound outside the cabin, like something heavy being pulled across the porch. I froze. Every hair on my body stood up. There shouldn't have been anyone out there. No neighbors, no travelers, no hikers, nothing. I sat up in bed and held my breath. The dragging sound stopped. Then came a knock. It wasn't loud, just slow, deliberate taps on the front door. 3 knocks, pause. 3 more knocks. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. After what felt like hours, the knocking stopped. I stayed frozen, staring at the bedroom door. Eventually, sleep must have taken me, because the next thing I knew, it was morning. And when I stepped out onto the porch, there were long scratch marks on the wooden floorboards. Deep, jagged scratches like someone had dragged a rake across the porch. That should have been enough to make me leave. But something about being alone, isolated, it messes with your reasoning. I convinced myself it had to be an animal, maybe a raccoon or a bear, even though deep down, I knew it wasn't. Nothing about those scratches was natural. The next night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the lamp on and sat in the armchair with a kitchen knife clutched in my hand. Midnight came and went, and then footsteps, not on the porch, but inside the cabin, right above me. The attic. I had never even opened the attic door. I didn't know anyone could be up there. But those footsteps, they were slow, heavy, measured, and they went back and forth for over an hour. I didn't move. I didn't even look up. I just sat there, eyes wide, tears running down my cheeks, praying that whatever it was wouldn't come down in the morning. I mustered up the courage to open the attic door. The ladder creaked under my weight. The attic was empty, dust undisturbed, no footprints, no animals, nothing. That was the day I decided to leave. I started packing my bags when I saw it. A photograph sitting on the kitchen table. It hadn't been there before. It was old, faded. It showed the cabin. And someone standing on the porch, someone tall, with no face, just a blurred, dark figure. Behind the person in the photo was a window, my bedroom window, and inside the window, someone was watching. I dropped the photo and ran, threw everything in my car, and drove down the winding mountain road like my life depended on it, because I truly believed it did. I didn't tell my aunt what happened. I just told her thank you and that I was ready to go back home. But sometimes, when I am alone in my room late at night, I still hear those slow, dragging footsteps above me, even though I live in an apartment now, with no attic. It was the fall of 2019. I was 18, living alone in my grandmother's old house deep in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. She had passed a year prior, and the house sat empty for months before my parents suggested I move in for a while. I was working at a hardware store in town, only 10 minutes away. Rent-free living sounded like a dream until it turned into a nightmare. The house was ancient, wooden floors warped from time, wallpaper peeling at the corners, and the smell of must clung to everything. But it had history, it had bones, and I didn't realize then just how much those bones remembered. The first few nights were fine, cold, but fine. I used a space heater in my room and kept the doors shut tight, but the silence at night was unreal. No cars, no neighbors, just the wind cutting through trees and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Until that fifth night, that was when I first heard the whisper. It was around 2:14 a.m. I remember because I checked the glowing red digits of my alarm clock as soon as I sat up. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it was too distinct, too human. "Come out." That's what it said, soft and raspy, right behind my bedroom wall. I froze, listening. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I got up, walked toward the wall, and placed my hand against it. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "Come out. I see you." I backed away, nearly tripping over the chair beside my desk. My first instinct was to call someone, but my phone was dead. I was sure I had it charging. But when I reached for the cord, it was unplugged. That made no sense. I always plug it in before bed. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was a dream. Maybe I was sleepwalking. I plugged the phone in, crawled back into bed, and tried to forget it. The next night, it happened again, same time, same wall. But this time the whisper changed. "Do you hear it too?" The voice was closer, like it was just behind the plaster. I pressed my ear to the wall, and I swear on everything, I heard breathing. Low, steady, slow breathing. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up until sunrise. When the birds started chirping and the sky turned gray, I finally relaxed. Until I saw what had been scratched into the wood paneling of the door. It said, "I'm almost out." The letters were carved deep, fresh, tiny splinters still sticking out, like it had been done with a knife or a sharp nail. I ran out of the house and didn't come back until evening. My boss asked if I was okay. I lied, said I had food poisoning. But all day I kept thinking about that wall, that voice, and the thing breathing behind the drywall. That night I didn't go to my bedroom. I slept on the couch in the living room. Or at least I tried to. Around 1:30 a.m., the power went out. Pitch black. The only sound was the wind outside and the ticking of an old clock on the fireplace. Then, footsteps, upstairs, deliberate, one at a time, like someone was pacing slowly across the floor above me. I clutched the flashlight I kept on the coffee table and turned it on. The beam was weak, flickering like the battery was dying, but it was enough to see that the ceiling above me had begun to crack. A long line forming across the plaster, like something heavy was walking in circles up there. Then came the voice again. From directly above me. "You shouldn't have stayed," I screamed. "I don't care how grown you are. When you're alone in a house in the middle of nowhere, and something speaks to you from inside the walls, you scream." I bolted out the front door barefoot. The gravel tore at my feet, but I didn't stop running until I reached the neighbor's house a mile away. They called the sheriff. He came out with a deputy. They searched the place top to bottom, found nothing, no footprints upstairs, no signs of break-in. And they said the carving on the door was probably something you did in your sleep. I knew they didn't believe me. Hell, I didn't even believe me. I didn't go back that night. Slept at the neighbor's. The next day I returned this time. I brought a hammer and began tearing into the wall where I first heard the whisper. Piece by piece, the drywall came apart. Behind it was nothing but old beams and dust. Until I found the box. It was small, metal, rusted, and buried between two studs. Inside were old bones. Small ones, like animal bones, and a note, scrawled in shaky handwriting. It read, "He talks to me too. I nearly dropped it. I called my parents, begged them to come get me. I told them everything, and for once, they didn't question it. My dad drove 4 hours and picked me up that evening. I never spent another night in that house. We sold it a year later. The buyer was an out-of-state couple. Said they wanted a quiet Appalachian getaway. I warned them. Said the house wasn't right. They laughed it off, said they didn't believe in ghost stories. 3 months later, they moved out without even taking their furniture, left in the middle of the night. Never explained why. The husband looked gray in the face when I saw him at the gas station. He just said, "He never shuts up, does he?" To this day, sometimes I wake up at 2:14 a.m. and I swear I can still hear it, that whisper, that breathing, calling me from the other side of the wall. Come out. It was October of 2016. I was 17. My parents had gone to visit my aunt in Kentucky for the weekend, leaving me and my older brother, Jake, alone in our old family farmhouse on the edge of a holler in eastern Tennessee. The place had been in our family for over 80 years. It was the kind of house that creaked even when no one was walking, windows that rattled at the slightest breeze, and wood floors that had seen generations of boots, mud, and time. That first night felt normal. Jake and I played Xbox, watched horror movies, and laughed until about midnight. Then he said he was heading out to his friend Brian's for a party. I asked if he was serious about leaving me alone. He smirked, said, "You'll be fine. Just lock the doors. You're not a baby." Then he left. The silence that followed felt like a slap. No TV, no laughter, just the ticking of the old clock in the hallway and the long, slow breathing of the house itself. I tried to distract myself with my phone. No signal. Of course, you never really realize how far removed you are from the world until your phone can't even pull up a weather app. I turned off the lights, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling, listening. The wind outside howled through the trees. The porch swing creaked in that long, slow rhythm it always did when the wind picked up. Then something else creaked. Not the swing, not the house footsteps on the front porch. I shot upright. My heart kicked into overdrive. I reached for the baseball bat I always kept beside my bed. Another step closer, deliberate. Then silence. I sat there, holding my breath. The kind of silence that presses in, makes your ears ring. I waited. Then I heard a tap tap on the living room window. I was frozen completely. The window was only about 10 feet from my bedroom door. Then the tapping stopped. I slowly got up and crept to my door. I cracked it open and peeked into the hallway. It was dark, except for a faint yellow glow from the kitchen light I had left on earlier. Then I saw it. Something moved past the hallway. Just a shadow, but not fast. It was slow, deliberate, like it wanted me to see. I slammed the door shut and locked it, then backed up toward my bed. I was shaking. For 10 minutes, nothing. Then I heard it again. Footsteps inside the house on the hardwood floor. Slow, heavy like boots. I swear I nearly vomited from fear. I texted Jake over and over. No response. I called straight to voicemail. I heard a voice outside my door, low, guttural. It said, "You left the door open, little one." I screamed. I ran to the window and threw it open. We lived on a hill. My room was on the second floor, but I didn't care. I climbed out, slipped on the ledge, and fell hard into the bushes below. My leg twisted badly, but I dragged myself to the barn, locked myself inside, and waited there until morning. When Jake came back, he found me curled up, sobbing in the hay. I told him everything. We searched the house. All the doors were locked, windows too. No signs of forced entry, but in the living room, etched into the condensation on the window, were 5 letters etched yellow. "We called the sheriff," he said. There had been reports in the area of a man sneaking into isolated homes. No one had been caught, but people described the same thing. Slow footsteps, scratches on doors, and the same voice saying the same thing over and over. "You left the door open." Jake never left me alone again, and I never spent another night in that house without a weapon within arm's reach. Sometimes, I still hear that voice in my dreams, low guttural smiling without lips. "You left the door open, little one," I used. To think nothing could scare me. I grew up in the heart of West Virginia, deep in the Appalachian Mountains. My family lived in an old farmhouse just outside a town called Mercer Ridge. It was surrounded by woods so thick you could scream your lungs out, and no one would hear you. I always liked that. Felt like freedom. Until the night I learned just how dangerous being truly alone can be. I was 17 that summer. My parents had gone to visit my aunt down in Charleston for the weekend. I stayed behind to take care of the animals. 3 goats, 2 dogs, and a stubborn old cat named Smokey. I liked being home alone. It made me feel grown-up, independent. I had no idea what kind of nightmare I was about to walk into. Friday night was quiet. I made dinner, fed the animals, watched some TV. Around 11 p.m., I started hearing scratching sounds. They came from underneath the floorboards. At first, I thought it was a raccoon or maybe a possum. We'd had critters get into the crawl space before, so I didn't think much of it. But this scratching, it wasn't random. It was slow, steady, rhythmic, like something was deliberately dragging claws across the underside of the floor. I got up, turned off the TV, and stood still. The dogs were restless, ears up, growling low in their throats. That was weird. Usually they only bark at foxes or strangers near the barn. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The night air was heavy and still. No wind, no bugs, no sounds, just silence, except for the occasional sharp tapping noise from beneath the house. I knelt down and pulled open the access door to the crawl space, shined my flashlight in. The beam cut through the darkness. Nothing but dirt, cobwebs, and pipes. I was about to close it up when I saw it. A pair of muddy boots, half buried in the shadows, and they were pointed toward me. I stumbled back so fast I hit my head on the edge of the doorframe. The flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled away. The dogs were barking like mad now. I slammed the access door shut and bolted it tight, ran inside and locked every door and window, heart pounding out of my chest. I called my dad. He didn't answer, so I left a voicemail, trying to sound calm but failing miserably. I slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow that night. Didn't get much rest. Every creak of the house made me flinch. By morning, I convinced myself it had been my imagination. Maybe just an old pair of boots I forgot were down there. I wanted to believe that, but deep down, I knew something was off, way off. The next day, I went to the local hardware store and bought a motion sensor, light, and a small camera. I set them up by the crawlspace entrance just in case. Told myself I was being paranoid, trying to feel like I had some control. That night, everything was quiet again, until around 2 a.m. The motion sensor light turned on. I watched from my bedroom window, squinting through the darkness. Nothing moved, but I swear I felt eyes on me, like something knew I was watching. Like it was watching me right back. The camera footage was worse. When I checked it the next morning, I nearly dropped my phone. There was a man crawling out of the access door, skinny, filthy, clothes torn. He moved like a spider, quick, jerky. Low to the ground, he looked straight at the camera, smiled, then slithered back into the darkness. I couldn't breathe. I called the sheriff immediately. They came out, did a full sweep of the property. Did not find a single trace. No man, no boots, no fingerprints. Just a lingering, rotten smell near the crawl space, like spoiled meat or something long dead. They told me it was probably a drifter. Said I should stay with a neighbor until my parents came home. But I couldn't leave the animals behind, so I stayed. God help me, I stayed. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with all the lights on, knife in hand, waiting. The dogs wouldn't stop pacing. And around 3 a.m., I heard it again, the scratching, louder this time, and something else, breathing, raspy, wet, shallow breathing, like it came from inside the walls. I grabbed the flashlight, walked toward the crawlspace door. My hands were shaking. Every part of me screamed to run, but I needed to know. I opened the door slowly and froze. There were words carved into the wooden frame. "You let me in," over and over, dozens of times, some of the letters still wet with fresh blood. I slammed the door shut, ran back inside, and called 911. This time, they took me seriously. Deputies searched every inch of that crawlspace, and that is when they found it. A makeshift bed made from trash bags and old blankets, cans of food, wrappers, a rusty knife, and a Polaroid of me sleeping in my bed. They never caught the man, never found out who he was or how long he had been living under our house. But I moved out the day my parents got home. I have not set foot on that property since, and I never, ever sleep without checking under the bed and behind every door, because once you know what it feels like to be watched, to be hunted in your own home, you are never the same again, not ever.